Doug! Did you know that Joe DiMaggio extended his major league record hit streak to 56 games on this day 84 years ago? What is a record in today's world that is unlikely to be broken?
The number of managers who sign up for a slow draft and complain if you don't pick in 30 seconds?
Welcome to the Diehards, the show that digs deeper so you can dominate your league. With training camps heating up, we're turning our attention to the most overlooked edge in fantasy football, the offensive line. This week, we're diving into the biggest risers and fallers heading into 2025, including surprising jumps from teams like the Broncos and the Buccaneers. If you're ignoring the trenches, you're missing the foundation of fantasy production. I am your host, JJ Wenner, and I am joined by the fantasy orthocle himself, Doug Orth. And our guest tonight is one of the top offensive line minds in fantasy football. He's a writer for Rotoballer and FTN Fantasy and serves as an offensive line analyst and ranker for Player Profiler. He blends real football experience with sharp fantasy insight. Whether it's redraft, dynasty, or best ball, if it starts in the trenches, Dan knows how it ends. It's Dan Fornek.
Hey, what's up, everybody? How are we doing tonight?
I'm doing great. Welcome to the show. It's nice to have you back.
It's great to be back. It feels like we never even left, you know?
Back in the same old spot. All right, Doug. Anything the good people should know before we begin?
Well, I would like to say that just like there's tight end day during the NFL season, there should be offensive line day at some point. Let's make this happen.
Oh, that's every day. Come on. Every day is offensive line day.
Every day is.
Like JJ said, hey, anything that people should know about offensive line play isn't everything, but it is something that the fantasy industry needs to account for more than it does. We see examples year after year of players overcoming middling line play, but those are usually the superstars. Do you think for a second that Chuba Hubbard did not benefit from his O-line last season? Bucky Irving? That's not to say either one of those players is bomb, but good line play will sometimes make good players great and great players elite.
All right.
Agree more.
Well said. Floyd Pinkerton says Dan is the real deal, one of the best O-line analysts he has seen.
Or she appreciate you, Floyd.
All right. Before we hit start, Jody Smith and the team at Full-Time Fantasy have done the heavy lifting once again. The 36th edition of the Pro Forecast magazine has hit the presses, packed with expert analysis, rankings, and draft strategies. It's your blueprint for dominating fantasy football in 2025. Be sure to tune in all summer long for your chance to win a free copy and crush your competition. All right, gentlemen, before we dive into the rankings, let's talk about offensive line play in the NFL. Now, last year, we discussed the general decline of offensive lines in the NFL. Last season, we saw some horrific lines, and something that stood out to me was the lack of ability to pick up stunts and twists from defenses. Now, maybe it was just the games I was watching, but is this something that you think, Dan, is getting worse?
I think it definitely has a tendency to. And so for just the general, with a stunt or a twist, the goal is we want to take our down linemen, our 4 defensive linemen, try to generate pressure and get sacks so we don't have to blitz. We put more guys in coverage. The NFL is a passing game now. So typically, a stunt or a twist, it's going to involve 1-2 defensive linemen slanting across the face and then taking a defensive end or a tackle and looping them behind to get free. When it comes to stunts and twists, from an offensive line perspective, you need to have consistency. You have to have communication. You have to have patience to stay on the same level. You have to be able to essentially, if you see your guy loop around, you have to be able to bump the guys next to you to pick it up. One of the big examples, I just saw this play the other day. I was going back and watching. I watched the Houston Texans. I think it was against the Rams. I can't remember who they were playing, but they were getting annihilated by Twist the entire game because their tackle, center, and guard weren't communicating. They weren't moving it. And so the question got me thinking. I went back and looked through, all the offensive lines last year. There were 12 teams that had 8+ offensive linemen play 190 or more snaps last year. And that comes out to about 19% of the offensive plays, right? So 11 of those 12 teams had 190 plus pressures with 7, and they had 7+ O linemen play. The same 11 of 12, well, not the same, another 11 of 12, a lot of crossover there, though, were the teams that gave up 20+ sacks. They all had 7 or more offensive linemen play at least 19% of their offensive snaps. That's pressures, that's twists, that's stunts, that's blitzes, that's communication. It's picking things up. We talked a lot last year about how communication and consistency are like the most important things at offensive line. A majority of the league, there's at least 12 different teams that had 8 different offensive linemen play almost 20% of their snaps. So are teams getting worse at it? No, but also are teams as deep or as offensive line as good as it has been in the past? Probably not. How many guys come out every year and, they were a top tackle in college, but now we see them as a guard, right? If you just look at the last 5 years, some guys stay at tackle. Rashawn Slater stayed out at tackle. Troy Fatanu, he's probably going to stay at tackle, but Tyler Smith was a tackle in college. Now he's a really good guard, but that's a less talented tackle in the pool. Elijah Vera Tucker, Peter Skoronski, Jordan Morgan last year. This year, there are questions about like Will Campbell, right? Is he a tackle? We don't even know if he's a tackle yet. Gray Zabel, Donovan Jackson, even like Kelvin Banks. He's a top 10 pick, and people are like, well, he might be a guard. So I think just the bigger problem is college and the NFL are very different sports right now, even though they're playing the same game. And so the quality of tackles is going down a little bit because we want speed. We want guys who are light, defensive ends and edges and outside linebackers are getting faster and faster and faster. So we're getting these athletes and putting them at tackle. But then when we get to the NFL, it's like, he's a guard. And so, and then if you're lighter, offensive line, I'm not going to shock the world here. It's very physical. Like you are going to have people roll on your ankles and roll on your knees. And so if you don't have quality depth, you are going to be in a position very quickly where you're kind of going to be stuck with, there isn't a single team in the NFL that had less than 6 offensive linemen play at least 19% of their snaps last year. Now, a team like Buffalo runs a lot of six linemen. They put a 6 guy out there instead of a tight end, and they use that in the run game. But every single team had at least 6 offensive linemen play 190 snaps last year.
That's a big number. It's a big number. So how do you teach communication? You're a coach. You've coached.
Yeah. Well, if I had that answer, I think I might have beaten the high school level, but it really, it's going to sound kind of like a cop out, but it really does come down to just repetition. And I think one of the things that hurts line play right now, and I want to be clear, it's good for football because it is physical and you don't need your guys hitting throughout the summer, but training camps and practices in summer has gotten lighter. Guys aren't in full pads. They're not hitting every single day. There's less practices. There's more restrictions. And so what you're seeing, especially early in the year, is you have a lot of teams that are learning on the fly, especially if they have a bunch of new pieces. A guard is a guard is a guard, but a scheme is different. And the guy playing next to you may play differently, or he may see things differently. And so if you're not getting those reps in the summer, you have to get them in games. And that's why you're seeing a lot of times issues. Now, if you're the Chicago Bears and you're just not very good in 2024, then it doesn't matter how many reps you have. You're just not going to be good. But, I think the communication piece is just, it's more so a nonverbal, understanding what the guy next to you is doing, understanding what he's looking for and being able to anticipate, okay, we might be getting this here. Or if this situation does happen, what should my read be? You know, when I was in college, I knew the guy next to me, you know, if he was going to do a certain thing, I might have to, instead of passing off a twist, I might have to try and go behind him and just pick it up on the backside of things. So but that I played with that guy for 5 years, you know, we knew each other really, really well. And so you kind of just pick up on that over time. And so as bodies move, or as, you know, you get different situations and different teams, the communication piece is really just experience. It's playing together and it's understanding, hey, this guy next to me is going to handle this way. I need to adapt and adjust and handle it similarly or in a way that I can help.
It's a pretty good answer. Doug, any follow-up questions?
No follow-up questions. You nailed it, Dan. You nailed it. The only thing I guess I'll add is, and I think it just dovetails off what you're saying, willingness and intelligence. Willingness being, intelligence being that we were talking about stunts and loops and twists before. Understanding that when one guy, the defensive end twists, there's going to be somebody coming at you. You don't need it. The NFL, the football in particular, is about chasing. You're hoping as the offense that the defense is chase the rabbit, right? And so whatever you think you see, you're probably not seeing. And so it's understanding that that you're probably trying to be tricked if the defense tackle is going outside, defensive end going inside, so on and so forth. So, all
right, well, let's dive into
the.
No, go ahead.
Sorry, if the defense is leaving a gap open, they've messed up. They have every square inch of that field accounted for. If your guy leaves, there is somebody somewhere coming to fill that hole,
and probably in a hurry.
Yes.
So buckle
up. Sometimes faster than you're ready.
All right. Well, let's dive into the rankings. And it's funny I compared both of yours, and that the only two teams you agreed on were the best and the worst. Your 1 and 32 were the exact same. Now, those two teams are the Bengals and the Eagles. I'm not going to say which is which, right? We're going to save that for a little bit. But with the Bengals offensive line concern, something that feels off to me is how we're valuing this offense in fantasy. Burrow is going as the QB5, Jamar Chase, wide receiver 1, T. Higgins, wide receiver 13, and Chase Brown at running back 11. It's all pretty close to where they finished last year. My question is for you gentlemen, can this level of production continue behind a shaky line?
Yes. As long as Joe Burrow is healthy. And here's the problem. We've seen it both ways. I would say for me, Joe Burrow is probably the closest thing to modern Tom Brady we have, right? The pocket movement, the processing, he will hold on to the ball until the very last second. He doesn't care if he gets hit. He's going to throw the ball to Chase or Higgins or Brown or whoever's there. When it works really, really, really well. But last year, he was second in pressure dropbacks, 251, 38% of his dropbacks, he was pressured. He was 41st in time to throw. He had 2.2 seconds to throw the ball, but he was number 3 in completion percentage under pressure, 58%. He was number 1 in passing yards when pressured. He was number 1 in touchdowns when pressured. He was number 17 in picks. He had the second highest big time throw rate when he was pressured. And the only guys ahead of him were Josh Young and, it was Bryce Young, or Josh Allen and Bryce Young, sorry. And when he was pressured, he was 12th in average depth of throw, 11.2 yards. However, his rookie year, 6 games missed, ACL. 2022, missed a game because he got twisted up on the knee. 2023, 7 games missed with a wrist. This time last year, we were wondering, is he going to be the same? Because he got an injury that quarterbacks don't usually get. And we were wondering if his grip strength would be affected. So can they sustain it? Absolutely. As long as Joe Burrow is willing to stand in there and deliver and he gets up. But they are opening him up to more hits than a lot of other teams are. And that offensive line is not going to be much better this year.
No, Doug, where are you at that with the offensive weapons?
Yeah, I think the one player that the offensive line for the Bengals could hurt the most is Chase Brown. But I'm going to say volume should minimize some of that, as it did with Joe Mixon during his time with the Bengals. Outside of that, I think the Bengals have just become accustomed to having average at best, and I do emphasize average at best, offensive line. So I'm not sure this year's front five changes the equation all that much. I do want to add Dylan Fairchild, and again, this is a very loose. He's a rookie, okay? So Dylan Fairchild has drawn some Wyatt Teller comps from his new position coach, and Marius Mims, who's the right tackle there, has all the talent in the world. So from that perspective, the Bengals line should be better than it was last year. Problem is the other three spots are middling at best, and the depth is either poor or unproven. So again, just in a nutshell, Chase Brown, I think, but he overcomes that with volume. Everybody else is already used to it, so I don't think we downgrade them just because.
All right. Well, looking at your rankings again, the two teams where your rankings were the most different were the Colts and 49ers. So I want to talk about those two teams. Starting with the Colts, Dan, you ranked them at 17th, while Doug, you have them at 2nd overall. Dan, your ranking isn't low, but why do you have them as just average?
Going into it, and I did my first run of rankings in June. There's more questions than answers, but again, you're kind of looking at a lot of different things. I look at the Colts offensive line. They are replacing two starters from last year. Now, one of those starters is Ryan Kelly. He's had a history of being injured. They drafted to backfill his spot with, I believe it was Tanner Bortolini last year, 4th rounder. And then they're losing Will Freeze, who was playing really well and got hurt, but he was only healthy for, I believe it was 5 games. Yep. So you're going to move, I think it's Matt, is it Goncalves?
Gonzalez.
Thank you. Gonzalez. Thank you. That is one of my English teacher phonetic mistakes.
I had to look it up.
Now, the reason why I come in with them more at the middle of the road, I think I had them at 16, 17.
Mm-hmm.
I can sit here and say I think they have one at their position, top 5 offensive lineman. I think that's Quentin Nelson. And he's been healthy lately, and I'm fine with that. I think Bernard Ryman is knocking on the door. If he has one more really good, he's kind of been one of those players who ascends. Now, if he does it for a 3rd year, it's like, okay, this guy is top 3, top 5 left tackle. It's a very competitive position though. So he's probably he's a top 10 guy, I would say, probably for me more in the 7-8 range. And then the last question is Braden Smith. Took a step back a little bit in pass protection, and I know he was having some mental health issues last year. It sounds like they've gotten that squared away. But even beyond that, he's played 12 or fewer games in 3 of the last 4 seasons. You're hoping that Blake Freeland, a kid you drafted a year or 2 ago, can be your swing tackle. The guy you took as a swing tackle last year is now playing right guard. So I have questions about kind of the depth right now. I think they are less deep than they've been in years past because they had to let some aging guys go. And I think for me, when it comes down to it, I feel confident I could plant a flag on one of their guys being top 5. I can plant a flag on 2 of them being top 10. And after that, it's a lot of question marks. So for me, when I'm doing my first pass at rankings, I'm going to put them more towards the middle, just because there are some questions, and there's a lot of time from, June to August where, okay, let's see how these guys are looking. Let's see what they're doing in a preseason game. That's a team that I could move up a little bit, but they won't be going into the year a top 12 unit for me, I don't think, just because I want to see it before I start believing it.
Okay, Doug, what did you see?
Yeah, I completely understand where Dan's coming from here. I think major difference here, in our opinions, is that I treated Ryman as somebody who's already maybe not at that elite level, but certainly has established himself. So maybe I jumped the shark a little bit on that one. But Ryman and Nelson, I think, form one of the better left sides in the league. That has to account for something. Braden Smith is, Dan touched on already about the mental health issue. I'm looking at last year, the fact that he graded out as well as he did, considering he didn't want to be there, and he will tell you he didn't want to be there. I don't know if he actually knew he was there sometimes. I'm not making light of it.
No,
that's
right.
That's just how much of a scary issue it was. I will say this. I don't think there's any question that Tanner Bortolini is a downgrade from Ryan Kelly. And then you talked about Will Freeze too. Those guys combined for 15 games last year. And I think we talked about Kelly. I'm sorry, Freeze playing 5, and then Kelly had 10. But as you already said, Kelly was not available to the Colts for about 2 months last year. Bortolini, when he was coming out of the draft, was generally considered the second best center prospect in that draft, and is a slightly better run blocker than pass blocker. So I think he's a better fit in Indy than he would be in most places. I don't account for the depth, and that's on me. When I do my grades, I don't account for the depth. I do write about it, but I don't account for it in my grades. I tend to think that I like Jalen Travis, the guy they drafted, live out of Iowa State. Pinter has some center guard versatility, and then Freeland. I think they have enough depth to get them by, and that's how I put it in my article, is to get them by. So the only major concern I have is Gonzalez, that Dan already mentioned. He only played one snap guard during his college and pro career. That's a span of 5 years. So I also think, and I'm wrapping up here, I also think it'll help the Colts cause from a line grade perspective to have a good athlete like Daniel Jones. I'm assuming he's going to win the competition there at quarterback. It's going to benefit them to have a good athlete under center and a run threat like Jonathan Taylor to keep defenses honest. So you see this with teams that have either the run pass, the RPO option, or just have dynamic run threats at running back and quarterback. It takes some of the pressure off the offensive line.
All right. Well, let's go to the 49ers then. With the 49ers, Dan, you had them ranked 23rd, and Doug has them at 5th. Doug, why are you high on the Niners?
Well, that's the operative word now, isn't it? High. They got a big bump in my grade projections because of Trent Williams, obviously, and then right guard Dominic Booney. It also helps that they have continuity in coaching. Chris Forrester, the line coach, is in his 5th season with the 49ers, and Kyle Shanahan's play calling obviously helps. With that said, my number 5 rank for this offensive line does not take into account any of the backups, like I already said, and is contingent on the starter staying healthy. Because Matt Hennessy is the only one I have some faith in. With that said, 80% of the starters returned from last season, so that has to account for something too. Williams is still playing at an elite level and critical to the success of 49ers, something you guys will appreciate. It's not near as deep as Dan's stats have been, but San Francisco was 5-5 with Williams in the lineup last year and 1-6 without him. Again, that has to account for something. Right tackle Colton McKivitz took a big leap as a pass protector last year, and Jake Brindle, who's the center, has been a steady run blocker over the last 2 seasons and is at least serviceable there. So therefore, my only question is projected starting left guard Ben Barch.
And Dan, what did you see?
So part of, I think, our disconnect here is going to be, I agree 100% with Trent Williams. 100%. I want Trent Williams to live forever, and I want him to be the left tackle for somebody for as long as he's alive, because he's amazing. It's crazy to watch him do what he's doing. And I also agree with Dominic Booney. I think for me, I looked at McKivitz more as a total body of work than just the 1 year. And I do not, one of the things that I don't do very much at the start of the summer, and I start to kind of work there, I think there are certain teams where their scheme helps the offensive line. I think the Shanahan system is very scheme friendly for offensive linemen. And I think you see that with what they invest in the offensive line, but it's not just them. It's Miami too. Miami does not have a good offensive line, and yet you have Tua completing 72% of his passes last year before he gets knocked out like 3 different times, right? On scrambles, I want to be clear, he is not in the pocket, but they are very good about designing plays so the ball is coming out on time, the ball is getting out of the quarterback's hands, so they don't have to invest highly in the offensive line. So for me, from a talent standpoint, Ben Barch in his career, he's a 5% career pressure rate guy. He's only played 1,500 snaps in 5 years, 65 last year. His pressure to sack rate is 10.2%. Some of that falls on the quarterback, right? A quarterback has to understand pressure's coming and get the ball out. But, a 5% pressure rate from an interior offensive lineman's not the best. I just for me, my concern is this. For years, at least 4 of them, you had Jalen Moore as your heir apparent to Trent Williams. Well, he's not there anymore, and you don't have an heir apparent to him anymore. If Williams does go down again, because, I'm sitting here at about the same age as Trent Williams, and I can tell you today I went to bend down and pick up my water, and both my knees cracked, and I haven't played football in a long time. If he does go down with an injury, we've already seen last year it spiraled in a hurry, and they had the guy that they drafted his replacement at left tackle. This year, that could be catastrophic. There's real questions about their depth. I think Pooney, I'm hoping he takes another step because he was a lot of fun to watch last year. He's another one of those tackle at Kansas who kicked into guard at the NFL, and he just punishes people. I'm just not as high on McKivitz, and I have a lot of questions about Ben Barch, and I wasn't even a big Aaron Banks fan, and it has nothing to do with me being a Bears fan, and now he's a Packer. It's just, to me, an average unit. And then when I factor in the depth, and if anything happens to specifically Trent Williams, I just don't know how that's going to go. Cause I do. Cause last year it went pretty rough. And it can only be worse because the guy you drafted to back him up is now playing with Kansas City.
Yeah. When I was preparing for this show, Matt Williamson had a tweet where he mentioned that, Trent Williams averaged 3.78 seconds to pressure last season, which was the best in the NFL.
It's insane.
Man, at his age, it's incredible.
You talk about some people who were just born to do something. And I know he works hard at it, but good Lord.
Born different.
Yes, 100%. He is the definition of born different.
Yeah. It's crazy. All right, diehards. Let's be honest. Dynasty leagues are where the real fantasy legends are made. Redraft is fun, sure. But Dynasty, that's for the diehards. The Dynasty Football World Championships are back for their 13th season, and this is your chance to build your squad from the ground up and chase the crown. Whether you're a savvy vet or a startup junkie, there's a league waiting for you. Drafts start at just $75 with higher stakes options available. Visit dynastyking.com and search for the Dynasty Football World Championship. Your Dynasty glory starts today. All right, gentlemen. So just for fun, I took your rankings and then I pulled rankings from PFF, Sharp Football, Fantasy Points, and Football Guys, just to see where we were. There are 5 teams that appeared on everyone's top 10 list: the Eagles, Broncos, Bucks, Chargers, and Falcons. So let's start with the Eagles. The consensus number 1. Everybody has them as number 1. 2-part question. What does this mean for fantasy? 2, why should we draft Will Shipley in the 15th round? Dan?
Well, the Eagles, all you had to do was watch last year or the year before or the year before the year. They are perpetually top 3. And they're in a run right now where I think for most people, if you were to just ask a casual football fan, someone who watches even just Red Zone, they're going to say, oh, the Eagles, right? We saw the Super Bowl. They dominated on the ground there too. Lane Johnson, he's another one, kind of like Trent Williams. He just gets better with age somehow. Doesn't make any sense. He may still be the number 1 right tackle in football. Penei Sewell is going to make it tough on him, but Lane Johnson's been the same level of play for over a decade now. Jordan Mailata, he's up there in the top 3 left tackles. Landon Dickerson looks like he's a top 5 left guard. Cam Jurgens, he is solid last year. You hope he's going to get better. He's also replacing a Hall of Famer, so no matter what, it wasn't going to look as good. I like them because they added experience depth. They brought in Kendall Lamb. They got Kenyon Green for the interior. They bring in Matt Pryor, who can play inside, outside. They always take the right shots on some of my favorite day 3 guys. Cameron Williams, the tackle from Texas. He's a physical freak, and he's not ready for the NFL, but he doesn't need to be because look who's in front of him. I don't know who the right guard is going to be, but if they could make Mekhi Becton look good, after some of the stuff we saw him do with the Jets, then I'm willing to let Tyler Steen or any of those guys they drafted. Jeff Stoutland, still the best guy, offensive line coach in the NFL. It's Stoutland you for a reason, right? Anybody who goes there, he turns to gold. If you're on the clock, I'm fine with, the one I'll push it back on, and it has nothing to do with the offensive line. Saquon Barkley, if he's going number 2, I'm not there. But then again, he shouldn't be falling past 5, if we're being honest. I think, I have concerns about the nearly 500 touches he had last year, more so than I do him as a player or the talent around him. I'm clicking AJ Brown every chance I get. Jalen Hurts in the 4th round feels like a crime. I'm committing that one every single draft I'm in. And if this is the year it goes bad, then so be it. Even Devonta Smith, Dallas Goedert, any of them, even Barkley in the right situation. The worst, if Barkley's healthy, it feels like the worst thing you're getting is the RB3. That seems to be the floor, because he was the RB1 last year, and he caught fewer passes than he has in a long time. And he played. So, I'm going to take my chances on that.
Doug, are you drafting Will Shipley?
Yes. Depends. I mean, especially if I have Barkley, then I'm moving him up a round or 2. Not that I care much about ADP, but yeah, I do want Shipley, at the very least, Shipley as a handcuff. I'm not going to add anything to what Dan said about the offensive line. And you do want anything and everything that you can get from Philadelphia. You want that in fantasy. We saw Shipley's explosiveness. We didn't get to see much of it, but we saw what little we did get to see of him. We saw his explosiveness, and then touched on it already. 482 touches for.
Did Doug's mic just go out?
Yeah, I think so.
Doug, your mic went out.
Can you hear? No more?
Oh, now I can. It's just
You're good. Yeah.
terrible for a minute.
Okay. So yeah, I don't know where I cut off there, but I would just say we saw the explosiveness from Shipley last year, and even if Barkley misses 1 or 2 games, you don't know when those 1 or 2 games will be, and you want a running back behind that offensive line. So I think that's just what I said.
All right. Well, the Broncos graded out as the number 2 OL. Does this mean we are hammering Harvey and/or Dobbins, Dan?
Well, they were last year a much better pass blocking group than a run blocking group. Now, it's a chicken and the egg situation. Is that because Javonte Williams is cooked? Is that because Audric Estime is not very explosive? Is it because Jaleel McLaughlin's just more of a pass catcher? It's hard to really put that on the offensive line because they do have a lot of talent in their starting 5. I don't know. I'm drafting RJ Harvey, especially now that Dobbins signed there and he's come down a little bit. But RB20 feels pretty rich too. Everyone's talking about the Joker role. I'm not quite there. I'm more of an Evan Ingram's the Joker, and I may be wrong, and that's okay. That's the beauty of this. But I remember, as much as we remember some of those pass catchers, I also remember a guy named Jimmy Graham with Sean Payton. He's pretty good too, as the tight end. But no, I'm taking Bo Nix. I'm fine with Bo Nix. I'm fine with RJ Harvey. I'm fine with J.K. Dobbins. I'm taking Cortland Sutton. I'm taking Evan Ingram. And, a lot of that depends on the kind of team I'm building. If I get to, I'm a big early round running back guy, especially in best ball. And that's probably going to cost, the mortgage this year, but that's okay. We'll take our swings, but I'm also not afraid to take shots on Marvin Mims. All you need is a big, right? He needs 2 catches and he could have 100 yards and a touchdown. We saw it last year towards the end of the year. I'm fine taking shots on Pat Bryant. I'm fine in the last round taking Devon Vele. Like, I think my dark horse, if I'm really going with a dark horse for a pass catching back there, don't sleep on Tyler Batty from Missouri. They tried to get him going last year and he got hurt, and but he was active over Estime in the playoffs. And if I like that offensive line and I want them to get people in space and do all that, then that's the guy I'm not taking Estime. I think he's fine. He's just fine. And I think McLaughlin might be out of a job here soon. So, and I'll say all this and then you guys can clip it and put it on Twitter and tell me I'm an idiot when McLaughlin ends up rushing for 2,000 yards. But, at the end of the day, last year they seemed to be better as pass blockers, but I have a hard time not watching Javonte Williams slog through the line and thinking that it's probably a him problem and not the offensive line.
Doug, where are you with the weapons on the Broncos?
Yeah, listen to this guy, Dan Fornek. He's disparaging Jaleel McLaughlin. What a I think RJ Harvey is a good pick regardless, if only because if in the unlikely scenario that it was bad offensive line play or they regressed this year, that would actually mean more volume for him as a receiver. So I don't know that it hurts him regardless. He's going to have great upside simply because Sean Payton's offense is annually among the league leaders in backfield targets. I think Dobbins is a great pick as an RB3 type if you're willing to overlook the likelihood of an IR stint. Strong offensive line play should also allow Bo Nix more time. This is again, I hate to be stepping on Dan's toes again, just repeating what he said, but strong offensive line play should allow Nix more time to throw deep, as often as he surprisingly did last year. So Cortland Sutton and Marvin Mims make a lot of sense because both players went deep.
All right. Well, let's go to the number 3 offensive line, the Buccaneers. Doug, are we all in on Irving and Baker?
So much is going to depend. I'm glad you came to me first, so I get to get this out first. So much is going to depend on how long left tackle Tristan Wirfs is out. If he goes on PUP, that September might be rough. Left guard was a weekly to the line already, so losing the left tackle is not going to help either. I'm all in on Mayfield in so much as he has the weapons to come close to what he did last year, but I think he will regress a bit, mostly because we can't expect the first-time play caller like Josh Grizzard to have a Liam Cohen-like impact. Now, I think Bucky Irving is unlikely to have the same level of success as well, but I think that's going to be more of a Cohen absence thing. He's still a strong pick in the second round, in my opinion. I just don't think we're looking at overall RB1 or even maybe top 5 for him this year. I think it's going to be more like a RB 6 to 10 range.
Dan, where are you on the Bucs?
I'm very scared about the first 4 games if Wirfs is on the PUP. Atlanta, Houston, the Jets, and the Eagles. Those are their first 4. I think Godeke and Cody Mosh are up there with the top right sides of the NFL. I mean, and especially the step that they took last year. Graham Barton, there's another left tackle that moved inside, right? Continuing the trend. Really solid rookie center for someone who didn't play center much in college. You assume he's going to get better. Ben Bredesen's a dependable vet. I don't think he's anything too special. The problem is backup left tackle's name is Charlie Heck, and he is not good. 7% pressure rate in his career. He's played 1,400 snaps in 5 years across 3 teams. It's rough. So I think Bucky Irving is probably being drafted at a ceiling to me. I'm also taking shots on Rashad White because he's late. I'm taking shots on Emeka Ibuka because he's late. Taking shots on Cade Otton because he's late. I like all of those guys at their cost, but the higher price guys, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Baker Mayfield, those are the ones that I kind of struggle with.
All right. Well, let's go to the number 4 overall. Falcons had 1 grade outside the top 10, but overall they were the number 4. Bijan and Drake are going high in drafts. Are we wheels up on all the Falcons, Dan?
Absolutely. Yes. Bijan is, if I'm drafting outside of number one, I'm taking Jamar Chase. If I'm drafting anywhere outside of that and Bijan Robinson's on the board, I'm taking him. He is, I think, my favorite to be the RB1. It has as much to do with him athletically as it does just the situation around him. They were the best average run blocking grade on PFF last year, collectively 75.2. That was their average grade. Losing Drew Dahlman hurts, but Ryan Newsill, he played. Drew Dahlman got hurt last year. He was adequate. He was a good fill-in, but also, he has an offseason now to prepare to be the starter. You assume Matthew Bergeron on his left is going to get better. He had a rough rookie year, but he bounced back last year. I think Chris Lindstrom's in the conversation for best offensive lineman in the NFL, much less right guard. I'm fine with Bijan. I'm fine with Drake London. I love Darnell Mooney. I'm taking Michael Penix. If you want to, you're looking for a good handcuff running back or a good, take Tyler Algier. We've seen him be good too. The big thing it's going to come down to is, what is Michael Penix? Is he the guy who had like 27 fantasy points in week 18? Or is he the guy who completed 57% of his passes in 3 games? And if he can rise to the occasion, then that offense could absolutely hit a new level, especially in a division that really doesn't have a lot of good defense, and you're going to be playing them 6 different times. So I think Atlanta, I love their offensive line. I love the situation. Drew Dahlman, I'm happy he's a Chicago Bear, but I don't think it dramatically hurts the rest of their skill players.
Who is their offensive line coach? Do you know?
Off the top of my head, I do not.
I don't want to put you on the spot. Doug, what do you think about those weapons?
Leopard. Dwayne Leopard.
What?
Yeah. Dwayne Leopard.
Gotcha. Dwayne Ledford.
Oh.
Yeah, regarding you asked, are we all in or pretty much in on the Falcons offense? And I'm sorry, I'm going to be repeating Dan pretty much all night tonight. So the only question I would have outside of Newsill is just the depth. But I know I don't account for that in my grades, which I probably should. We'll take that into account next year. But Atlanta's offensive line has stayed remarkably healthy, with the exception of Drew Dahlman for a while last year. Has stayed remarkably healthy over the last couple of years. With that said, I will not hesitate to take any Falcons in what should be a fun offense featuring bulk out usage from Bijan and plenty of deep shots to Drake London and Darnell Mooney. So, yeah, all those guys on. I don't know what the ADP's on, and I'm not sure I care if they come up. And if Drake London is there for me in early mid second round, taking him. If Mooney's there for me as a wide receiver 4, taking him. Because both of those guys are going to probably go over 1,000 yards, and they're going to have a lot of big play touchdowns.
All right. And last in the top 5, the Chargers came in at that 5 spot. So, Dan, what are we doing with the Najee versus Hampton debate?
Drafting both of them. I liked Hampton where he was, and based on kind of what I've been seeing, his ADP isn't skyrocketing. Najee, they said he's going to be on the NFI to start training camp, the non-football injury list. But that doesn't mean he's going to miss any time. It's probably going to be a short stay. It sounds like, or it looks like he's dodged anything super major. The word I think in all the messaging has been a superficial eye injury. The eye injury part is scary. I'll lean on superficial, but I've always been more of a Najee fan just because, he's a wrecking ball. I think Najee's a clear upgrade over Gus Edwards, who saw a good amount of work last year. I think Hampton's a clear upgrade over Dobbins. So I'm drafting both of them. And honestly, given where they are, even if you look at like best ball, one thing that I'm kind of into this year is if I have the highly touted running back, if I'm taking Jahmyr Gibbs, I'm also coming back with David Montgomery because he's not that much, or there's enough of a gap in their pricing to where I just want Detroit's backfield. It's not costing me 2 premium picks. It's, a first round pick and an 8th round or a 6th round or whatever it is. I'm doing the same thing with the Chargers. If I take Hampton in the 3rd, 4th round, which is, it's best ball, everyone's going to go a little bit higher. And in home leagues, he'll probably be, a little bit later than that. But I'm also coming back and taking Najee, because if either of them gets hurt, the other guy is going to have massive weeks, because I just have faith in the offensive line around him.
Yeah, it seems that's what Harbaugh really wants to do. Doug, are you leaning one way or another?
I want to see if the microphone's better here first. Is any change?
A little bit.
Okay. Oh, we'll take that. We'll work on it over the next week. So I think Najee may have answered the question for us with the fireworks incident. I did see where there's some speculation that a strong training camp from Hampton could give him early bell cow usage. And I think that's going to happen regardless. And that's not because I'm an anti-Najee kind of guy. It's just because I think Hampton is that good. But they will both have a role. Just want to add some statistical context again, because I'm agreeing pretty much with Dan down the line. Running backs accounted for 373 carries and 43 catches last year in a backfield that featured Gus Edwards at times. This year's edition of the Chargers should be better defensively and offensively, which should be more positive game script and more work for Hampton and Harris. I think it's possible that the Chargers are one of the 6 to 8 teams each that seem to happen each year that will have more than 400 carries in their backfield. So, and I'm again with Dan. If you draft, I'm looking more at redraft than I am best ball, traditional redraft, I should say. And if Hampton goes into the 4th round, I'm all over Hampton in the 4th round. And if I can come back and get Harris a little bit later, I think I don't want to say that'll be the more productive of the two, because you mentioned the Lions. I could see the Lions backtracking a little bit, and especially David Montgomery, but I still think he's a value. He's still worth using as RB2. I'm talking Montgomery now. And I could see that happening too, where Hampton's let's say a mid-range RB2, but maybe moves up to low-end RB1 by the end of the year, and Harris is at worst a strong flex RB2 type. I think both guys push for 170 plus carries.
All right. Hope that happens. All right, but it can't all be sunshines and rainbows, gentlemen. I also pulled the teams who ranked in everybody's bottom 10. The Giants, Dolphins, Seahawks, Bengals, and Texans. So the Texans came in dead last at 32 with a high rank of 30. What does this do for our drafts with Mixon, Chubb, Stroud, Nico, etc., Dan?
I think Nico Collins is safe based on volume. We saw it last year. I mean, he was a top, I believe, 12 wide receiver. He was wide receiver 1, and a lot of that was due to just attrition around him. It makes me a little bit more hesitant to click on the secondary options. Makes me a little bit more hesitant to click on CJ Stroud. Last year, CJ Stroud was 35th out of 40 in sack rate. Got sacked on 8.4% of his dropbacks. He was 38th out of 40 qualified quarterbacks in pressure rate. 34% of his dropbacks were pressured. And he was 36th out of 40 in hits taken. He took 103 hits last year. We talked about it with Joe Burrow. That is not sustainable. At some point in time, something is going to happen. Their solution to all of that was to cut their right guard, Shaq Mason, dependable, solid, strong veteran, getting old, but dependable. They took a top 10 left tackle, Laramie Tunsil, and they traded him. And so the solution to having a bad offensive line last year was to make it worse. Now, I'm sure there's some locker room stuff. There's behind the scenes things. But their answer was, okay, we're going to bring in Cam Robinson, who, he was fine with the Vikings, but I also don't think that makes him a good player with Houston. When you have the Kevin O'Connell offense, we talked about it a little bit earlier, we understand where our weaknesses are, and we can scheme ways to get Justin Jefferson the ball fast. I think their saving grace this year is they have a new offensive coordinator. He's got ties with the Rams. and you're just kind of hoping that they can find ways to get guys going. I'm fine drafting Collins. I'm fine drafting Mixon just based on workload. I think he's just going to have so many touches that it's kind of irrelevant, and he's not super expensive. Best ball early on. He's a round 5 pick, round 6. I can pay that for, my RB2, RB3 and hope that he gets enough touches. But I'm worried about kind of all the ancillary pieces because I just don't think that unit's going to be very good, the offensive line.
What about you, Doug?
We're going to have our first disagreement here. A little bit down the road, I'm talking about Mixon. Everything else I'm pretty much on board with. Again, Dan said it. Houston was awful up front last season, so I'm not sure we should downgrade the passing game much, if at all, for the passing game with Nico, and we'll see about the rookie receivers. Christian Kirk seems to be. I think he'll get a lot of action just because working out of the slot. It's going to be important that somebody that can get open quickly is available, and so I think he'll be fine. I would argue, as much as Dan said, I would argue that the Texans could have the worst offensive line in the league this season unless new offensive line coach Cole Popovich can get Blake Fisher and or Ariante Ursary, the second-round pick, up to speed quickly and coach career years out of all 3 members of the interior line. And let's face it, I don't think that's happening. Houston seems to be happy with what it has up front. I guess you could argue that it has better depth this year, but that's a small consolation when the starters aren't that great to begin with. I'm anti-Mixon this year because it sounds like he will enter camp on a bit on the iffy side because of his ankle, and he could face a stiff challenge if we can assume that Nick Chubb is almost 2 years removed from his injury. If he brings any kind of health to the table, I think we're looking at a challenge for early down work, and I think he's going to lose most of his passing down work to Woody Marks. So I think where he might be the best of the presumed 3 running backs in Houston, I think he's going to have volume challenges this year.
All right. Well, the Bengals were 31st, but we already discussed them. Seahawks came in 30th. People are drafting the fantasy weapons, but I don't think they're considering how bad the line is. Walker, Charbonnet, Darnold, and JSN. Where are you on those weapons, Dan?
Well, I'm going to pray for Sam Darnold. Thoughts and prayers with that. I mean, it's. I think that Jackson, Smith, and Jigba can be okay because kind of like Doug was saying with Christian Kirk, he's probably going to be used mostly in the slot. Now, Cooper Kupp complicates that because Cooper Kupp's at his best in the slot. But if they're able to design things to get him the ball quickly, he can survive. He can be okay. I'm fine with Kenneth Walker. I believe in Kenneth Walker, and I also believe that Clint Kubiak is good at scheming up the run game. I think that I know that Clint Kubiak he's a big wide zone guy. We're talking San Francisco, Miami, those kind of places that rely on wide zone, and you don't need a stellar offensive line to get your run fits because with a wide zone, you want to move guys horizontally so the running back can find a lane and just one cut and get vertical and explode. So a bad offensive line isn't necessarily going to stop wide zone. Now, what'll stop Kenneth Walker is his hamstrings or his ankles or his calf or his quad, like all of his lower body. So I'm fine with Kenneth Walker. I think he is a player who can overcome, especially with these changes. Gray Zabel, I love that pick in the first round, but you also drafted a guard in the first round. I think Charles Cross, if you can keep him healthy, you're doing great there. He's when he was healthy last year, he was good. Abraham Lucas is just a major question mark. If both of them are healthy, I feel better about the offensive line than if they're not. But that doesn't fix center. Connor Williams thought so much of it last year. He retired mid-year, right? And that was supposed to be a big boon for them. Like, okay, we got this guy coming off an ACL. I didn't think he'd be ready for week 1, and he was, and then he retired after like 8 games. So the offensive line questions are legitimate, but I think there are more questions for Sam Darnold. I'm still trusting the run game because I trust that their offensive coordinator can design a run game that will allow the running backs to have success regardless of the talent in front of them.
Now, the Dolphins came in at 29th. Doug, Achane is pretty beloved. How does the line affect your evaluation of that running back?
I think Miami can overcome last year's issues for the most part if left guard James Daniels is healthy after tearing his Achilles early last year. I think it's week 4. And rookie, help me out on this. Jonas Savanaia
sounds good
is what the Dolphins hope he can be. I don't like what Miami has on the edges, but the fact that Tua Tagovailoa gets rid of the ball as quickly as he does minimizes that somewhat. Furthermore, Achane does most of his damage on the perimeter, or at least a lot of his damage on the perimeter, so I think he's less affected by Miami's weaknesses up front than most running backs would be. His biggest issue is Tagovailoa's health. And then as far as Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, those guys are players that get open quickly, and the ball's right in line with Tua getting rid of the ball quickly. So I would be, as if the guard play is significantly better than it was last year, and it could be, then I would like Jalen Wright as a sleeper. I'm going to be drafting some Jalen Wright just in case that happens. But I know I was pretty high on him and pretty aggressive on him last year. Wouldn't say it backfired. It just didn't. It just didn't fire. But yeah, those are my thoughts there about Miami.
All right. So the Giants were the 28th ranked offensive line. Does this mean we are avoiding Tracy and Scattaboo? Dan?
I don't like Cam Scattaboo. I wasn't a big fan. He's fine. He's a fun back. He runs hard. Look, he runs really, really hard. He's never going to go down on the first hit. He's got really good contact balance. He has really good hands coming out of the backfield. He just runs like a 4.7 40. And so my issue with Scattaboo this year, it has less to do with the offensive line, and it has more to do with, I just think the Giants are going to be bad. And so if they're not going to be scoring a lot of touchdowns, if they're not going to be in a lot of positions to get touchdowns, then Cam Scattaboo to me doesn't make a whole lot of sense unless Tracy gets hurt. I'm fine with Tracy. He's got to clean up the fumbles. That was a problem for him last year, but I think the Giants are going to be in a lot of negative game scripts. Russell Wilson does not inspire me. Jameis Winston he gives a great pep talk. He does not inspire me. Jackson Dart, I liked Dart. I think he throws a nice ball. But the Ole Miss offense is really good at scheming guys open. So I just don't know what he's going to look like in the NFL. And I'm going to go ahead and guess that the Giants don't want to find out this year until they absolutely have to, because at that point in time, Brian Daboll is coaching for his job. If Andrew Thomas is healthy, you can sell me on this offensive line because he's going to elevate the people around them. John Michael Schmitz took a step last year. He's still probably more on the average side of centers, but he's also a second-year player who missed time his rookie year. The rest of the offensive line is just okay. I don't think they have any studs outside of Andrew Thomas. So for me, it's more, I just don't think the Giants are a very good football team. And so that's why I can't take Scattaboo. I'll take Neighbors. I'm fine with that. None of their other pieces are really drafted that early. So if I'm in the late rounds and I need a third tight end or a second tight end, sure, I'll take a shot on Theo Johnson. Why not? He's big and he's athletic. I'll take a shot on Darius Slayton or Jalen Hyatt because I know Russell Wilson hasn't met a throw over 20 yards that he doesn't love. So, but outside of that, the Giants, I think, are just going to be a lot of passing. So I want the guy who I'm pretty sure is going to catch the passes, and those are Neighbors and Tracy.
All right. So I wanted to end with a quick discussion on where the two of you agreed with each other, but disagreed with consensus. So you two had Buffalo ranked 12 and 16, while the rest of the panel had them at 5th. Sharp Football talked about consistency. They're returning all their starters. Fantasy Points mentioned the highly effective tackle duo, and PFF sees no weak links. Where do you two differ? Dan?
Go ahead, Doug.
Doug?
I'll let Doug start. I've been hogging a lot of the first ones. Let me hop on his coattails.
So yeah, you were talking about the Chiefs here. I'm not sure. What's that?
Buffalo.
Okay, I'm ready for that one too. So Buffalo got a middling grade from me because the line ranked 12th in run blocking and 16th in pass blocking. I like the tackles, but I'm less certain about the guard play and overall depth, and that's where I have my issues with Buffalo. Dan?
Buffalo, Deion Dawkins, I like. I think he's an above average, probably fringe top 10 left tackle. Spencer Brown took a real step last year. Osiris Torrance has not lived up to being a second-round pick. Last year, he was 127th out of 132 qualified guards and pressures allowed, 37. David Edwards, solid, not great, 98th out of 132 guards, 25 pressures. Connor McGovern, 27 pressures as a center. That was 56th out of 64 qualifying centers. Josh Allen makes them much, much better, makes them look much, much better than they actually are. And Josh Allen helps in the run game because if you are afraid he's going to come up or he's going to be running right up the middle, then James Cook is going to be running around the edge. I think that their offensive line is just a solid group. I had them at 12. They're, I am comfortable with that after watching Spencer Brown last year, but top 5 is ludicrous to me because it's just who's their top 5 guy.
Yeah. I just want to add something, and I'll ask you this real quick, Dan. I liked Osiris Torrance coming out of college. I thought good run blocker, and any input on why that hasn't worked?
I don't think that he's this is going to sound crazy because it's an NFL player. I just don't know that he's athletic enough. Like he just seems to struggle with speed. And the problem is you can get away with it in college. Not every single guy's a Sunday player, right? But right. I think at the NFL level, you're matching up with, defensive tackles who teams are like, okay, in this, we're going to kick him out to like a 5 technique on the end or put him on the end. And he just can't keep up. It's the short area quickness. And he has been fine in the run game. He's not terrible in the run game, but in pass protection, he just cannot get his feet going fast enough to stay in front of guys.
So for the record, Football Guys had them at 2nd and PFF had them as 3rd.
Good for them.
Yeah, good.
All right, next up. Everyone is higher on the Chiefs than you both. You have them at 27 and 22, while the panel averages at 17th. Doug?
Yeah, I'm not sure if everyone's just assuming that Josh Simmons is going to light the world on fire right away. I think he's going to be very, very good down the but let's make sure he's healthy first. But Kansas City could be in real trouble at tackle if he's not. We know the Jawan Taylor is a walking penalty and not particularly good when he's not holding. So, and then we got Kingsley Suamatea, who was moving from left tackle to left guard. Hey, he had one week 18 game. Graded out fairly well in that game. That was 31 snaps in a meaningless game against Denver. I'm not crazy about their depth either. So, yeah, they did bring in Jalen Moore from the 49ers. We talked about Jalen Moore before. You do have some depth there, don't get me wrong, but there's a chance that I don't think he's starting. I don't think Moore is starting because you got $20 million a year Jawan Taylor on the right side. I don't think you're benching him anytime soon, and you got Simmons, who you want to get as many reps as possible right away. So, again, if Simmons is slow on the uptake for some reason, maybe has a slow 4 to 8 weeks as he's getting accustomed to his leg being getting to full health and just being a rookie. I see some real problems there, potential problems there. Dan?
Joe Thuney, happy he's a Bear. Again, biased, very biased. And honestly, they made the right choice. If they wanted to extend Trey Smith, yes, okay, absolutely, awesome guard. Creed Humphrey, awesome center. Josh Simmons, so his final season, yes, he was fantastic. And honestly, watching his games, if he would have done that for an entire year, he probably would have been the first tackle off the board. I feel just based on what you see, but the context there is they didn't play anybody. He did, their biggest matchup when he was healthy was Marshall. Mike Green lined up on the other side almost the entire. I think they played against each other for 2 snaps. So the first big game he was in was Oregon, and that's when he tore his patellar tendon. And a little bit of context, I tore my patellar tendon about 5 years ago. It was the most brutal recovery, and it's your return to play. I'm not surprised that he's going to be ready for training camp, because the return to play performance is about 6 months. That was about how long my physical therapy was. It took me about 12 to 18 to feel normal again, to feel like I'm completely confident now. I'm not the caliber of athlete he is. But also he's going to be playing at a higher level than he's ever played before while recovering from, I mean, the surgery itself. They're threading your tendon and drilling into your knee to put it back together. I mean, part of your physical therapy is relearning how to walk. Like, that was a thing that happened. So I'm not sure that he, at this point, even though we all love him and even though, Ohio State wins it all, I don't know that he's going to be the upgrade that everyone's penciling him in for as a rookie. I mean, and a patellar tendon across all sports, that's a career-changing injury. You could, the list of guys who have come back from it, it's not very long. And there's a lot more guys who have suffered them and never come back to the same level. So, if that means Jalen Moore's left tackle, okay, is he better than what they had last year? Probably. We don't really know, because he never got to play because Trent Williams was always in front of him. So I think you have a real question at left tackle. Jawan Taylor, 118th out of 137 tackles and pressures last year, 37, 120th in sacks, 7. That's not a new problem. That's his career. And, that's why everyone loses their mind when he tries to get an early jump, because if he doesn't, it's probably going to be a pressure or a sack. So I don't know what problem they fixed. And, we also have to replace our all-pro left guard, who also played left tackle for us and got us to the Super Bowl. So I couldn't get them confidently in the top 20. I don't think I could get them in the top 25 based on what we know today. If Josh Simmons is good to go week 1 and he shows it, then I'll more than happy to eat my words. But I kind of need to see the guy coming off a career-altering injury be what he was before.
They were ranked 9th by one of the sites. The last team, the Steelers. Dan, you are 7 spots ahead of Doug, and Doug is higher than the rest. So what do you see in the Steelers?
There's a really good chance that Broderick Jones is just bad. I mean, at this point, there just is. I know this is hold on. This is going somewhere. I also saw Paris Johnson Jr. as a rookie play right tackle, go to left and look way better. I'm holding out hope for that. I am the Troy Fatunanu fan club. For me, Joe Alt was number 1 in that class. There's no doubt about it. I was really, really torn between Fatunanu and Fashanu for number 2. I think he's technically sound. I think he's mean. I think he moves super well. He was an excellent run blocker. He was fluid in pass protection. If he's your right tackle and he's healthy and he's good to go, I'm going to put some faith in that. You have a dependable veteran at left guard, Isaac Samalu. Zach Frazier was exactly what I hoped he would be as a 4-year college starter with a 4-time heavyweight wrestling state high school champion. He just was a mauler. And I think you got more out of Mason McCormick than you hoped for when James Daniels got hurt. And I'm optimistic that, with those small school guys going up to the NFL, you always wonder, can they keep up? And I think he showed that he can. The depth is a little spotty, but all of their offensive linemen, or 4 of their 5, have been drafted in the last 2 years, 2 first-round picks, a second-round pick, and I believe a 4th-round pick for McCormick. He was a 3rd or a 4th. So the draft capital and 2 of them performed above their capital last year, Frazier and McCormick. And I'm just going to believe in the guy they drafted in the first round as well, even though we didn't see him very much. So it comes down to Broderick Jones. Does this flip back to left tackle help him find whatever he's looking for? Because it's not Madden. You can't just flip guys. In college, I played left guard and right guard, and I would sometimes I was basically our starting left guard and backup right guard. Every single thing is flipped and you have to process it. And I know he's had 2 years to do it, but it's if he's been a left tackle his entire life, every step is different. Your aiming points it's like operating in a mirror, except doing it at full speed in real time. And so I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt that moving back to left tackle, and now you can make the same case with Fatanu flipping from left to right, but also he was more of a technician than Broderick Jones was. So anything to get him comfortable, I'm willing to give it the benefit of the doubt for one more year.
Yeah, it's hard to do things in reverse. I thought I had something in my ear, and I was trying to look in a mirror and like get it, and I almost ruptured my eardrum like 4 times because I was going in the wrong direction. It's dangerous out there in them streets. Doug, anything to add about the Steelers?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought this up because I was stunned to see Pittsburgh as low as in my rankings as I had them. But basically boiled down to having Mason McCormick not having a higher grade, projecting him for higher grades, because I like every other starter, and Frazier in particular has a bright future ahead of him. I think at worst, Pittsburgh has 3 above average offensive linemen, if not better. And then we'll see about Broderick Jones. And then McCormick he probably outperformed, just like you said, he probably outperformed his draft status last year. And I think it's just a matter of time with him. So I think pretty easily we could say this time next year, 4 out of the 5 guys are above average at their positions.
They were ranked 29th by one site, below the Dolphins, below the Bengals, below the Patriots.
Let me ask you something, guys. How is Pittsburgh going to run the ball 500 times with 29th ranked offensive line?
Sounds like poorly, according to that site.
Well, listen, they're clearly not going to run the ball with Aaron Rodgers behind center. I mean, he's going to audible out
out there somewhere.
Oh, God bless him. I have some Eagle fans, friends, Steeler fans, friends, and I'm like, man, like you guys are getting your hopes really high. Like you did see the Jets last year, right?
No, he's still in there. He just hasn't been good for 3 years, but he's been waiting for this team. He's been waiting for Arthur Smith. That's the guy who's going to unlock it all.
I was going to say, if anybody can unlock a hidden talent, it's Arthur Smith.
And he's a married man now, so he's got his personal life in order too. So
who is?
Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah. I can't say that part on air. I'll say it once we go off the air. All right, it's about time to say goodbye. A big thank you to Dan for coming on, taking time to talk with us again. Do you want to take a second to let everybody know where they can find you and what you're working on?
All right, guys, this might be the longest part of the podcast, and I'm long-winded. You could find me at Rotoballer. You could find my work at FTN. You could find my offensive line rankings in season. They're updated bi-weekly at playerprofiler.com. And I'm also writing for PFSN this year, Pro Football Sports Network. That's more traditional fantasy, not so much my niche offensive line stuff. So basically, if you just Google a fantasy website, you got like a 13% chance of finding something I've written out there somewhere.
You're like the new Gary Davenport. You're right everywhere.
I'm the utility guy. Just plug me in. Let's go.
Doug, anything you want to share?
Yeah, I've got a couple articles coming out this week. One already hit the site. It's called In the Zone, so I break down the different shell coverages and talk about the strengths and weaknesses, what each one is, strengths and weaknesses of each, and what kind of beats it. And I've got an article coming out tomorrow, kind of coattailing or dovetailing off that, which examines the receivers and tight ends that did well against each of those coverages, and that's called Cover Beaters. So look for that probably on Friday, maybe as early as tomorrow.
All right. Well, thank you to everybody for listening. Please like and subscribe. I'm at JJ Wenner on the socials. You can follow the pod at FF Diehards on X. We will be back next Wednesday at 8 p.m. with the great Scott Pianowski. Until then, remember, love yourself, know your worth. You are enough. Boat drinks, my friends. Boat drinks.